Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the HR Leaders Podcast, the show where we explore the future of work with industry experts and HR executives from the world's leading global brands. Today, we're joined by Johans Ansari, co-founder and CEO at Knockri. Welcome to the show. How are you?
Good, Chris. Thank you so much for having me. Yeah, I'm doing well. I think since the last time we spoke, the world has changed, but
I
really
know
excited to join you today.
that was the first thing I was thinking when we had that conversation, and then we haven't spoken since then. And I think a week later, the world, so a few weeks later, the world changed, and then we are where we are now. But how are you, first and foremost, before we jump into the show?
No, I'm doing well. It's just taking it day by day and just really, making sure that all of our employees and our partners are very are really taken care of in the sense that we've been reaching out to them and getting an understanding of if they're mentally being affected by the situation, and if we could be of any assistance, and just showing a lot of empathy and trying to understand and put ourselves in their feet as well, to make sure that each and every single person, especially working from home, isn't very distressed at the moment, which is very difficult. Which is a very difficult time right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm with you. I'm with you. It's especially in this environment where you can't see people in front of you. I'm very concerned about my employees, friends, family at home, especially those that are living at home on their own, who are isolated
Yeah.
during these times, as well. So, how has it been an effect on the business? Because obviously, as a leader in this space of remote, helping companies around the world hire remotely, I'm sure it's also been a big strain on you and the team. Now everyone's switched to hiring people remotely, as well. How's that impacted you and the team?
Yeah. So for a lot of organizations that are really thinking about what talent acquisition is going to look like, uh, as they continue to hire, we've been getting bombarded with like requests, and especially from folks in the financial sector, from the CPG sector, and the insurance industry, healthcare sector. And so what they're saying is that for anybody that they're trying to hire is, hey, we know that it's a little bit uncertain at the moment of when we're going to come back to work, but we still need bodies for a lot of the projects that we're currently working on. So we will remotely hire you. So we'll screen you, shortlist you from home over like video, and then we will virtually onboard you. And once things are better, um, you can come into the office. But even that conversation is a very complex conversation, because some organizations, I mean, as, as we know, have fully gone remote, and then some of the other organizations will want to do a hybrid mode. So it's going to be really interesting for us to see what work from home and that hybrid model looks like. But
Mhm.
coming back to Knockri, uh, we've been very grateful to help organizations remotely hire, and screen and shortlist diverse candidates that were being overlooked in the past. And so that is something that I'm really excited about at the moment.
Yeah. Well, let's jump into a bit more of that. Give everyone a short sort of intro about who you are, your background, and what was the inspiration behind Knockri and the name as well, just to give everyone some context.
Absolutely. So my name is Johans Ansari, and essentially about 3.5 years ago, I was applying to jobs. And you guys know I have a long ethnic name, and I wouldn't get a call back from employers. And so my co-founder Maz from my last business, he's like, "Why don't you just anglicize this?" And when you're broke and you have no other choice, you're going to do whatever it takes. And so we went from a variation of Jordan, Jacob, Jason, And when I anglicized my resume with those names, in 4 to 6 weeks, I got a call back from the same recruiters and I got hired. And at a time when you have no other choice, you take the job. And so I took the job, and I'm sitting in this D&I class for that organization.
Oh,
And they show you these like multicolored hands, and some more multicolored hands holding up the globe.
we all
And
know
some
exactly what you're talking about as well. Yeah.
yeah, and these stock images, and we just felt that there has to be a better solution. And I actually had to change my name to get a job there. And so I came together with my co-founder Maz, Faisal, who's a machine learning scientist, and a very renowned IO psychologist to create Knockri, which is an AI video-based skills assessment tool. So we're assessing soft skills of candidates um, applying a job, and our whole mission is to empower the world with fair and equal opportunity, and make sure that everybody who's applying has a fair shot.
Yeah, yeah, and amazing work, and that's why I was super excited. Did so many companies reach out to us, and or vice versa, that we to come on the show, and what your purpose really stood out to me as well, and I thought it was so
Thank you.
important. And it just so happens now more than ever that's being highlighted as well. It's even more important as well, and the inspiration behind the name, which I thought was pretty cool.
Yeah, so it's really interesting. Knockri, the word Knockri means the word job to about 1 billion people in the world. So it's the Urdu language, Hindi, and Punjabi. And so we wanted to have a play on word, and so knocking on the door of opportunity in English, but in our language, it actually means the word job. So
Love that.
we went with it.
No, that's cool, man. I'm glad that you shared that as well, because I was like, Knockri, I was trying to figure out, like, I was like, what am I missing here? What am I missing? But no, it makes complete sense as well. Oh, where should we jump in? Like, in terms of where we are right now, what are sort of the biggest challenges that companies that are reaching out to you are facing, and how are you helping them?
Absolutely. So at the moment, we've been, because of Corona, like primarily, what was happening is that a lot of organizations are going through a transformation of their talent acquisition function. And while there are some industries that have stalled hiring, like in the airline segment, a lot of the brick and mortars, entertainment organizations, the folks that are in large like grocery chains, the healthcare sector, the banking sector, they're still hiring.
In the
And
thousands,
so
thousands.
in the in the
Yeah.
tens of thousands. And so they're reaching out to us and they're saying, can you help us hire talent fully virtually? And so we're having like conversations about hiring candidates straight from home, and so screening them, shortlisting them, and then remotely onboarding them, and they get to start from home. And once the situation like changes, and when the organization like figures out their hybrid model, or when they want to bring them into work, is when they would bring them in. But we're helping them address their current need, to just really like remotely hire, and in a very safe way that is also um, you know uh, helping them increase diversity in shortlist of the candidates as well.
Yeah. How do you do that? I'm sure everyone's thinking, and how do you make
Yeah,
sure that you make the process more inclusive? What does that look like? Can you give us a breakdown of specifically what that looks like?
absolutely. So there's a couple of components. So number one is from a product side, that we have added a lot of features in. And then the other one is on an algorithmic side, right? So on the product side, when the candidate takes the assessment and the employer gets a short list, they see no names, no faces, everything is fully blurred out. They only see the scores of the candidates on these scientifically validated KPIs, such as like one of our customers, that's IBM, they will see attributes like collaboration, a growth mindset, empathy, and see the scores. So we have worked very closely with leading IO psychologists to make sure that we have clear correlations to success predictors, and so the customers really like trust the output. So they would call in people based on the scores and not their names, not their ethnicity, their race. So we're stripping that out. And just as an example, if I am a Pakistani male and I continuously look on the Knockri dashboard and I keep on hiring, like brown males as an example that have no correlation to success predictor for that job role, that behavior, it gets flagged. So we want to really make sure that we can like pin any sort of conscious or unconscious bias in the recruitment cycle.
Cool. So you're kind of removing the unconscious bias by not showing those attributes, and you're holding people accountable.
Correct. Exactly.
At the same time.
Exactly.
What does the candidate experience look like? So I'm applying for a job on your platform. Actually, let's start with how you work with a client to make sure you tailor. I'm sure you're tailoring the questions and the process to each client specifically. Is that right? What does that look like? And then how does that work into the experience?
Absolutely. So if you really think about this, right, we have a vast library of scientifically tested job personas, like, right? And so each of the organizations that we work with, Education First, that's one of our customers. It's one of the world's largest English language teacher employers, IBM, several other customers. Now, these guys have core competency models. So they already have like models and a framework of what success looks like in a specific job role. And so we map those competencies with our internal skills that we have, and then we would integrate into the applicant tracking system, like, right? So we're integrated into Workday, into Success Factors, into into all of them basically, right? And then the candidate, they would apply it as such, right? So the candidate would go on the employer's website, and they have a basic knockout criteria. Are they legally able to work in that country? Do they have X years of work experience, as an example, right? And right after that, they are sent over a white labeled Knockri assessment.
Oh, so you don't even know you're on a different platform. You kind of it's seamless.
Exactly. We want to make sure that the candidate feels like they're part of that same experience, and that's why we've really helped with the NPS score. Candidates like love the experience. We've improved the NPS score significantly, and we're 508 compliant in the US. So if any candidate like requires any type of accommodation, or if they need to reach out to the recruiters or anything of that nature, if they need to use a screen reader, we're fully accommodatable there. And then the candidate would land on a very beautiful white labeled assessment from the organization. And we want to make the process very personable. So we get the hiring manager to record 3 to 5 short video questions that they would ask somebody when they screen them. And it's short video questions, and the candidate has anywhere from a minute to 2 minutes to like respond. That's fully customizable. And the questions are also fully customizable. And if the candidate, if they mess up, we fully understand, we're all human, to have another opportunity but it's going to be a different question that it's going to assess for the same KPI.
Oh, interesting.
So
Okay.
yeah,
All right, because
yeah, and
you don't want him to be able, you don't want him to have the ability to record it a million times the same question, because then they're just gonna rehearse an answer. Yeah. Okay.
exactly. And what we also like do is that we give the candidates the opportunity to have a test run, so they can just like practice with the
Okay.
UI,
That's good.
get a good understanding of, and really make them feel comfortable throughout the process. And once they answer these short 3 to 5 questions, and they have to be short, because what we've noticed is that if they're long questions, there's a very high like drop off rate. So you want it to be very short, but also be able to collect enough like data that we can make scientifically correlated predictions to success for that job role. And once the candidate finishes the assessment, they actually score the experience. So you, as an employer, such as IBM or whoever is our customer, can actually see if the candidate liked the experience, or if it did not like it, or if there's any chance of improvement. So really giving the candidate that ability to provide feedback as well.
Mhm.
It's extremely important.
Yeah. And then what the next steps after that? The hiring manager gets an email saying that person's
Yes,
now hired. What does that look like?
it's it's even further
I'm
automated.
making you do a whole
And
demo. I'm genuinely interested, because so many I've seen so many companies do this really badly. So
yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
many. So I want to understand what it looks like.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And so what happens is that they get the short list of the best fit candidates. Okay, so for example, it's 300 candidates as an example. They can filter from top 10, top 20, top 30, and and set an automatic trigger to send these candidates a live job interview. So basically, we also have an automated calendaring solution. So all the folks that have been shortlisted, they get stack ranked and are automatically sent over a live job interview. And that is when the hiring manager would come in and actually interview the candidate.
Does it also look at the hiring manager's like diary and say, there's a free slot here, there's a free slot here, match you automatically?
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, this is a very, very complex calendaring system, and yeah, it looks at your open schedule, the candidates, and then it matches you up. Correct.
Yeah. How does it select who are the great candidates, though? Can you give us a bit more? Everyone, a lot of people keep throwing around the word AI,
Yeah,
and a lot of times we look at that and we realize it's not really AI, as well. So what does that look like? Is it looking for keywords? Is it sentiment analysis? What is it that it's actually pulling out and saying this is actually a great candidate based on these criterias?
that's a great question, and we've seen there's so much like fluff out there, and it's so difficult to
Yeah.
parse through the marketing and the fluff of the marketing, right? And so what what we've done is that we took a very scientific approach. And when you take a look at building out assessments, one of the highest indications of success predictor is actually the content of the response. It's not their emotion. It's not uh, it's not necessarily how they're physically like reacting, but it's what they're saying. And so about 95% of the score of the attributes such as empathy or a growth mindset is made up from converting that speech into text and then analyzing that
Mhm.
context and correlating that with the actual like question. And so that primarily like makes up the score of the candidate. And on top of that, what we've also done is that for some of the job roles, such as a consultant or like a sales like staff, 5% of the algorithm takes a look at inflections in tone, and that is more for like congruence, and really making sure that what the candidate is saying, and and they have like certain inflections, we can actually correlate that to a predictor on the job role.
Hmm.
But we've seen, when we speak to a lot of our customers, they see a lot of tools out there that are, and this is very like simple. Anyone can slap this together. Is, oh, if a candidate has like disgust, or if they're fearful, or if they're or if there's a anger. I mean, those emotions, just analyzing, has no indication of how that person is going to actually perform in that job role. And so, like, why a lot of the organizations are resonating with our technology, it's like because it's a lot more explainable.
Hmm.
And so we do a blind test, so we make sure, Chris, and with all the customers, is that the output of Knockri's algorithm has a high level of agreement with their hiring managers. And so we really make sure about that, so they trust the results. And when we started off initially, Chris, it was very difficult. So we got diverse, gender and racially diverse hiring managers from like business lines, and we spent a lot of money on the R&D component to make sure that the folks that are actually screening this talent and providing us feedback on our algorithms are also they're a good, what do you call it? They're a good
Representation.
representation of the candidates that they're going to be like
Yeah.
bringing in. So we really like went through this entire validation process to come up with Knockri.
Yeah. What tips would you give to people listening right now that are really actually going to be having virtual interviews? As as someone, if I'm doing an interview tomorrow virtually, what tips would you give to me? Not saying we're trying to gamify your system, but what tips should you give? Because it's very different, right? You're staring at a camera. Most people have never done that before, where you're staring at a camera, answering a question. It's a very different experience. What tips would you give to people who are doing remote
Yeah,
interviews?
well, absolutely. So what I'd say is that really familiarize yourself with the UI, and the experience, and in our case, in particular, we really get the candidates to make them feel like really comfortable about the process. And then what we do is that, we ask them to like treat it as if it's a Skype job interview, or if it's a Skype conversation, and just so like very, um, re- like really get them to understand that, um, this is gonna like move the conversation along a lot faster.
Hmm.
And a lot of the employers are currently like struggling with these job interviews. So a lot of them, like, even the employers are sort of in the same space, that they're adjusting to a lot of these like technologies. But I think as a candidate, uh, from our perspective, we have made the tool very personable, and we have made the tool very, very like comforting, and gotten them to understand each and every like single like segment. And the other thing is just be very natural about it. I know that there are certain nerves that can happen, which is very, which is even, which is very, which is like very human. Some of the good platforms will actually get you to redo the assessment with a different question. So don't think that if you messed up,
Yeah, it's okay.
like
We're
you're
human.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah, yeah, exactly. What about feedback, right? How are you working with your partners to ensure you deliver feedback to those that don't proceed to the next stage of the process? How are you communicating with those? Because that's one of the biggest problems.
Yeah, and that's a really good question. We see at the end of the day, we are a screening and shortlisting tool. And what happens is that a lot of organizations, they want to manage this part very carefully. And so we as a technology is able to provide that feedback. But
It's up to the client
because
how you
we
do it.
yeah, and
Where
that's
you're
the
going with
thing.
it. You like we'll give it to
Yeah,
you, but it's up to you how you do it because obviously it's plugging into their ATS
and
as well.
that's the thing.
Yeah, that must be quite
Yeah.
frustrating for you almost though, because then you kind of you're not really in control of the full candidate experience. So when people use your platform, obviously it's white labeled, so they don't even know it's Knockri half the time, but not being able to ensure that people get the feedback that they deserve after, or
Yeah,
at least a reply in some respect.
yeah. And what we're actually doing right now, like because of that, because candidates are a core part of Knockri. And so we're in the process of like releasing uh, an assessment that they can just take and just like practice on and get feedback there as well. Because some
Right.
of the employers and the legality we can't
Yeah.
overcome. So, but we want to do whatever we possibly can to make them feel happy as well
Hmm.
and
Well,
give them
yeah,
that
it's
feedback.
important. It's so important, right?
Yeah.
It's super important to do that. What about in terms of from a cost perspective? How does this fare in terms of the traditional ways people are doing it? How much is it more cost effective? So if so, how much more cost effective? What does that look like? What are some of the financials of hiring remotely in this way?
Absolutely. So in the past, when we were, dealing with several organizations, they had a, a long psychometric assessment, a long questionnaire that was really hindering the NPS score, and candidates like weren't really happy. So they were paying, I think, north of, I don't know, 12, $13 US for an assessment, and then they would do the phone screen as well. And what we've done is that we've come in and we have displaced that cognitive assessment and that phone screen, and we are priced very competitively. We're $5 like per screen candidate, and obviously when an organization has a large amount of volume,
Oh,
uh,
that helps.
we also have a discount as well.
Okay, so you charge
Yeah.
per candidate, $5 per candidate. Obviously, it's a larger organization like an IBM. I'm sure you have a deal with them at a lower scale. What is the onboarding? So I'm sure so many companies have reached out to you now saying, "Can you help us?" And I
Yeah.
know they have from following you, which is great for you, and congratulations to you and the team.
Thank you.
Especially not just because of that, but also the way you're going about it to make sure it's fairer for everyone as well. More importantly, which is really a big part of your why and your purpose, which you shared earlier on as well. What is that? How quickly can it get up and running?
So we actually get up and running within 24 hours. Okay. And why that is that we're integrated into like most of the applicant tracking systems. And then secondly, if an organization like doesn't have their core competency models, we actually have our scientifically proven job personas. So the employer would just choose a role, auto populate a validated like skill framework to assess against, and just launch the assessment with the click of a button. So as an example, consulting role, okay, here are the attributes: empathy, growth mindset, collaboration, like client success as an example. And then trigger this to all of the candidates that have passed the basic knockout criteria. But with that being said, obviously, when we do work with a lot of the organizations, there's internal IT departments, there's
A lot of
legal,
things go on, yeah.
So as long as the organization can mobilize all of the stakeholders a lot more like quickly, we can deploy it within 24 hours.
Yeah. Well, that's pretty good. Wasn't
Yeah.
expecting that as well. What about from the other perspective, candidate experience? Obviously, we want to focus more on them. What's the additional benefits of them being able to do this remotely? Not COVID aside, obviously, that's an obvious one, given what's happening. But in general, what's the benefit of them being able to do this remotely as opposed to coming in for an interview?
Yeah, well, number one is that I'd say number one is that with Knockri, each and every single candidate that passes through that knockout criteria is looked at. So nobody is ever left out, right? So traditionally with these organizations, it just was not humanly possible for them to go through thousands of consultants or thousands of sales roles, right? So each and every single person has a fair shot
Hmm.
of showing themselves, and really giving them that the liberty to show themselves. So that's number one, obviously, and number two is that uh, like with a lot of the candidates that were falling through the cracks or that were being looked over because of some conscious or some unconscious like bias with Knockri as an example. Everyone that is assessed, the employer does not see their face, they don't see their names, they only see their scores, and so the candidate has a much like better shot of being hired, going through the process. And so, when we look at the results, Chris, we've actually helped organizations increase gender and racial diversity in shortlist of candidates by up to 25%. So 13% more female candidates that were being overlooked in the past unfairly, 12% like more racially diverse candidates. And we really wanted to make sure that we're not hiring these folks based on tokenism. It's actually better performing talent. So we tracked post hire performance. And what we saw is that the Knockri shortlisted candidates were actually performing 23% better on the quality of hire metric. And so we really tied that feedback loop that, hey, listen, you're unfortunately missing out on diverse talent, and at the same time the talent that you're like missing out on is actually better performing talent. And once the organizations really start to learn this, they're like, oh, like, we'd love to learn some more about Knockri. So,
Hmm.
that was a huge component of our technology. It's the post hire like performance and the diversity aspect.
Yeah. What are your hopes for the future?
Well, my hope, well, I have a lot of hopes for the
Not
future,
in this
as
space
you can
specifically. Obviously, there's a lot going on right now, so that could go a lot of ways.
imagine.
uh,
Yeah, my hopes for the future are that organizations are a lot more inclusive, because one of the challenges that we face is that we can help a company increase diversity in their organization, but then if if it's not an inclusive environment where the candidate or the employee doesn't feel like that they belong there, they end up churning. And so, it's a painful cycle of trying to hire diverse talent, but you can't retain them.
they leave
So
just as fast as
just
they come in. Yeah.
exactly. So just hiring for sound bites is something that we need to really stay away from, and really, understand on how can we keep them within the organization and help them excel here.
Hmm. Yeah, no, we see that often. A lot of the chief diversity officers I speak to every day and companies, and that's a big frustration for many leaders that I speak to as well, who get hired into organizations to fill a quota or tick a box, but you're hiring them into an environment that isn't inclusive. Then they're going to leave just as fast as they come in, and it's such a waste of time, their time, your time, and it's actually taking us steps back rather than steps forward as well. But I really appreciate you taking the time and to come on and join us and sharing the work that you do. There's, as I said, there's many companies that I speak to that have similar products what you do, but I love your why, your purpose, and how you've built that into the platform. And it can tell you're there with genuine intent to help people as well. So thanks for joining us. So there's sort of one parting piece of advice. What would that be? And if anyone wants to reach out to you in the team, where's the best place for them to connect with you?
Yeah, I think one piece of advice that I'd say is that, like, as the world is turning to like remote work and working from home, a lot of organizations that I'm seeing are starting to see the world as a global like talent marketplace. So if you are a leader in talent acquisition, you should strongly consider, hiring folks that might not be from your country, because there's a lot of talent that we can't like discover unless we give them the opportunity to. That's one thing. And yeah, guys, connect with me on LinkedIn, Johans Ansari. Visit us at knockri.com. That's knockri.com. And I'd love to have a chat about D&I, and just anything I can also help out from a like transformational perspective. And thank you so much again, Chris, for having me. This was fantastic, and I look forward to staying in touch with you.
Cool. Well, thanks again for joining us. Appreciate it. Everyone on LinkedIn, thanks for tuning in, and we'll look forward to seeing you again tomorrow. See you later, Johans. See ya. Bye.
Take care.
Bye.
All right.